All right, hello. Uh, don't know how the quality of the stream is going to be. I was experiencing some internet issues, so we'll see if I switched cables. We'll see if it want to behave or not. Hey, good morning, Gaxix and Tjustrand. How's it going? All right. Things to do, things to click. All right. Oh, you're in Maya. That's nice. Right. So I think I'll just start. Let's do it. Coffee and freelance. Yeah. So I did a little bit last night. Not a lot though. I wish I would have had more time, but I didn't. On this one, I was talking to Aluminium, I think, yesterday. I think it was Aluminium, and I think it's he, was talking about, like, was it Aluminium? Maybe it wasn't. No, I'm not sure. Either way, one of the Discord members. Anyways, I'll get back to the point. Hey, Belinir, good morning. Georg, good evening. It's evening for you. Huwad, welcome. Morphia, nice to see you here again. Anyway, so I was talking to this one guy, and on Discord, and he was saying like, oh, I need to. Said that he's been wasting so much time doing other things than art, and now that he has the opportunity to do art, he wants to make sure as to what to focus on, so that he'll get the most out of his art. You know, I think that is a very common thing that people think about, and like what do you need to do, or what is assumed that you need to do in order to get good at art, right? And that's an interesting problem to have, because in what way, how do you deal with it, right? I mean, you could deal with it in many different ways, but probably the most common one is to just try to do it all. And I don't think that is the. What am I doing there? I don't think that's the right way to do it, actually. Hey, good morning, Captain Jetlag. And I gave him he was first very vague with his question. He was like, how do I get better at art? That's such a wide spectrum of what art is, that how can you even like start to answer that question? So I gave him the general answer of practice art to get better at art, right? But what I wanted to get to, the point I wanted to get to was, because we are in a world now where we get information so easily, there's a huge like inclination to try to know everything at the same time and get better at everything equally. You know, just because the knowledge is out there, right? It's it's just it's so easy to reach into internet and grab it out of the cookie jar. You know, which is it's a downfall for many artists, that the whole idea about trying to learn everything is I don't think it's the right way to go. Uh, so what you gotta do, which I gave this Hugo, allt okay. So what suggestion I gave to him was figure out. Hey, good morning, Eric. Figure out what you're bad at, the worst at, um, and try to eliminate that flaw uh, at a focused, you focus in on this one thing, and try to um, figure out what that is, so that you can learn your weakness, right? Your biggest thing that holds you back. And one other thing which I mentioned was like the importance of 1 second, I'm confusing myself here a bit. To try to segment things so that they're way more easier to understand. So one of my suggestions were, of course, studies they are extremely important. It's where we get the information. It's where we analyze things, you know, which is super important to learn new things, right? Studies, still life, observational drawings, all these things that helps us enhance our visual library, enhance our understanding of things, you know, proportions and all these things. That's really important. And the other aspect is sketching and practicing the sketching aspect of art. You know, when you try things out, and also using imagination, and all these things. You know, like practicing all these more abstract and less abstract things in order to fully explore what we can do. But also then there's another point which is really important, is to try to push that knowledge as far as you can in you know, in art, so that in theory, that when you do all your studies, that information needs to go somewhere, right? You need to apply the knowledge into something. Otherwise, you're going to miss out of the application of it, right? You're not going to fully understand it until you're forced to use it. Um, hey, Tushroom, welcome. Hey, Jacob Mobley, you made it. And so when you do, like, study all these things and learn all these things, it's so easy not to apply the knowledge. And if you keep cramming information into your brain, new and new information constantly, Like how would you be able to even know like where to begin, right? Like where you're filling your brain with knowledge and all these studies and proportions, and then someone tells you draw someone jumping in the air, and you'll instantly go you know, very stiff, probably very arranged, um, all these things that because you haven't practiced the ability to apply the knowledge, even though your brain is full of it, right? So that's a huge problem a lot of people have, the inability to use that knowledge. So one of the things I suggested was that when you um, do your studies, you also have to once a month maybe apply all this knowledge that you're studying into one piece, and really try to push it as far as possible. Because if you remember on some of the special streams I was ranting about um, that infamous last 5% of a penny, which is really hard uh, to reach. Like this 5%, you in theory you will never reach 100% perfect painting, but you constantly try to push those paintings as far as you can, right? So that you chase those last 5%, and then they will always evolve, and you will never be um, like I said, be able to do a finished 100% perfect painting. But the more you learn, the more you try to finish an illustration or a piece of art, the better you'll be at the art of finishing something, right? That it takes a specific amount of knowledge and a specific set of knowledge, you know, in order to be able to finish something. But then it requires a lot of knowledge to be able to sketch something and you know, use your knowledge that you have gathered in order to be able to even start the painting. So all these things, you know, they go hand in hand, and it's so important to practice all aspects of it, and so that's why, for example, I suggested I think it was aluminium, to single out the thing that holds him back the most, and practice that until it's no longer an issue. And when you're iterating those kind of things, where you do studies, you do sketching, you do imagination drawings, you know, all those things that requires a knowledge to be able to start finishing a painting, and then you need to apply it to one, and then you just rinse and repeat that constantly, so that knowledge stores in the brain. Like a part of my latest lecture is about, I talked about it before, but implicit and explicit knowledge. Implicit is the knowledge that has stored deep in your brain, that you don't need to have a conscious recollection about it. It is automated. It is practiced uh, into that part of your brain where you don't need to grab it in order to know it, you know, like actively uh, search it out. Like uh, it's also very commonly you know, referred to as sweet spot, you know, when you're in the middle of your flow, and everything is just kind of going perfectly, and you're just perfectly in the zone. Like the analogy where I first heard it was basketball analogy. Like they were hitting three-pointers all the time, and they were like perfectly making the basket, right? That's how you say it, right? And the analogy of someone then asking, how do you actually do it? They have to start explaining, and they're removed from the implicit mind state into the explicit mind state, where they have to consciously recollect and go out of this non-thinking mind state. So that's like, well, when you free sketch and practice drawing from your imagination, you're relying on that knowledge that is implicit in your brain. And as soon as you start thinking, well, now there's a problem here, that means there's a lack of knowledge that is so practiced into your subconscious that you have to like in an explicit way, extract that information or apply that information. So that is an easy way to figure out where your weakness lies when you're sketching. So that's why, for example, a lot of times when I do my studies, or I don't do them anymore, I used to do them a lot. What I used to do was mix imaginary work, imagination, and the studies, right? So, for example, maybe I studied process of some master painter, how they applied their knowledge and how they started a painting and underpainting and all these things, while I look at the palette of the master painter, but I do something completely that is mine, right? So I take the palette, I take the construction, but it's a monster instead of a woman on a field, whatever, random. So in that way, I'm learning the colors, I'm learning the process, but I'm applying it in my own way so that I understand myself better, right? Hey, Novio. Hey, beard bros. So I think that's a really important aspect of art is repetition. Obviously, that's the only way we can store information so that they become implicit part of the brain, so that we don't need to consciously recollect, the proportions of a hand or the color of the sun. All these things, they after a while, when we practice it, it becomes implicit knowledge. It becomes just automated, right? So the trick is applying and learning. And if you don't apply it, you will never fully learn it. It's the same with like martial arts, right? You can stand in shadow box all you want. You can stand and shadow do the shadow moves, or whatever. But if you never one-on-one practicing application, you're never gonna learn it. I mean, many times also when you're in martial arts, for example, when you're fighting, you'll get hurt. You'll be in a fight and lose or win. But either way, you'll learn what works and doesn't work, and you will never ever get to that point if you never go into a fight. I mean, I'm not talking about a street fight. I'm just talking about just a practice fight, right? But practice fights still become to some degree serious because it's a fight. You need to apply your knowledge, and then you of course go and the next practice, you don't have a fight. You run the drills and you repeat them, and you try to plug the holes of your moves, etc., etc. And it's the same with art. If you never go into a fight, that's why I've always I'm a what's it called, proponent. Is that against? I mean, like I'm for going into art competition. I'm for doing challenges, because there's no other way to learn than application. And when you're in a competition, you automatically force yourself to apply your skill set in a completely different state. It becomes so much more it becomes a serious matter, right? You really need to try to do it right, because you know you have eyes on you, and you need to do your very best. It becomes pressure, and also it stops you from sitting on YouTube and wasting time, or Facebook, you know, because you know, oh shit, there's a challenge I need to apply myself to. But if you never do that, you'll never be forced to apply yourself. But I mean, some people can do that without joining an art competition, by just focusing in on finishing a portfolio piece. I mean, that's the same outcome, you know. Jacob Mobley, seek revenge. I will revenge. Chillstrand. Yeah, exactly. That's the lesson for the day. If anything, that's what you should take out of the conversation. No, but what's the proverbial? Is that what do I mean? What does proverbial mean? I actually don't know what that means. Define proverbial. Oh, internet. Thank you for being efficient. Slow. Yeah, but the art version of a street fight. Let's see what proverbial means. Of a word or phrase referred to in a proverb or idiom. I don't get it. I don't get it, that part. I'm too stupid today for understanding what proverbial means. I kind of understand it, but I don't. So there we go. The stupid foreigner. I understand it's part of, like, shit hits the fan, the proverbial shit. I don't know. I don't get it. Here you go. Sun making noises. But yeah, fish hooks and chin kicks, anything that's allowed, aka photo bashing and does 3D. Hey. But I think it's the whole thing about applying knowledge and what to learn to get better at art. I mean, there's so much to tackle. There's so much to learn. It's like how and where do you even start? And I remember, uh, I mean, I always try to do. I mean, I always try to sit down, look at my own art, and go, what don't I like about it, and try to be as objective as possible, so that I can make a um, fair assessment of my skill set. I mean, obviously, Hugo snälla, there's a like, you know, there's a huge gap. Also, what you have to remember is like you don't know everything, and we're all beginners at some point, and sometimes it might be hard to know um, what doesn't work in your art. That's why feedback is great, especially if you get feedback from some understanding person and not just someone giving their point of view from their current mind state, right? I think that is the biggest issue. Is a lot of feedback or construct or criticism usually is just their opinion without really being constructive for that specific person. You know, you can get feedback that maybe is just their reflection of what they've been thinking of lately, rather than actual factual good feedback. No, I'm not shaming photo bashing or Dash 3D. I'm just, having fun with it. It's all valid techniques to use. But my point being, just my point being, what I wanted to get to was in regards of self-criticizing your own art is obviously not to shit on your skill set. Um, is very important. It's very important to also think about what you do like about your art, and where you should take it for the future. You know, like, oh, I really like the way I draw monsters. You know, like maybe that's something that you do really well, and then you look at that and go, yeah, I really want to develop that skill further, because I really enjoy the way I draw uh, women or portraits or whatever. But then you also go, oh, I'm really bad at drawing faces, or my perspective skills are bad. I'm quite weak in colors and so on. Then you have a much clearer direction, at least, even though maybe you don't technically know what you're doing wrong when it comes to, let's say, proportions or color theory. Maybe you're not there yet, knowledge-wise, to pinpoint, like, oh, my palette is broken, or or I'm using the wrong kind of saturation, blah blah blah. Uh, that can come from an outsider or with time. But if you look at your art and like try to figure out where you want to go with it, and in what way is, what's the direction that you'd like to go in, and then start constructing some sort of battle plan, like some just understand yourself more, where your weaknesses lies and where your strength lies. Because if you just keep shitting on your art, it's going to not feel good to do art, because you just know how bad you are. So it's really important to also pat yourself on the back, because art is very personal to some degree. You put a lot of yourself into the art, and not just time and effort, but also emotions and pride and so on. So it's really easy to forget that it's important also to pat yourself on the back and think about what you're doing right at the same time as thinking about what you're doing wrong. I think that's very important. Presentation is always important. A good presentation skill can sell an idea really, really well to a client or upper management or to the producers or to the people not involved with art. Presentation is a big part of the field of concept art, etc. Illustration, obviously, if you illustration is presentation. That's that's all illustration is, presenting the idea in the best possible way. So obviously that is a skill set that's great to have. High presentation skills goes a long way. Usually, the upper layer of concept artists, they're really great at presentation skills. They know how to pose the character. They know how to place the character on the canvas. They know what to do with the background. They know what to do with if there's going to be text, so and so on. It's all like big picture wise. Then if you talk about your portfolio, that is also the same skill set. How do you present your work? You don't need to be some sort of web designer, but it's important to start thinking about presentation and what comes first, and thinking about yourself as a product and the product that you do create and presentation you do give it. What does it say about you and so on. I'm not the very best at presentations. I do like a bare minimum presentation most of the times. But that's something I've always been working on. I feel myself like that's not my strengths, where a lot of other artists are great at presentation and maybe not that strong at concept art as in designing something. But yet their stuff looks better because they package it in a way more attractive way. So that's for a lot of people I've been kind of looking up at when it comes to presentation skills, and not so much their imagination or design ability. I try to stay away from learning that from others because I want to stay true to my mind. But I do look at presentations a lot from other artists. I think that's one of my weaknesses. Exactly, Novio. Okay, time's up. Let's switch off the. I think that'll look cool. Let's switch that layer off. I think with correct like hiding and then pushing forward parts, it's gonna work. It looks forceful. I think that's good. All right. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you for joining me in the chat and hanging out and listening to my ramble and asking questions and so on. Again, this is not like anything set in stone, the one true way of doing it, or my thoughts. It's just my thoughts down the line, 10 years down the line, So take it with a grain of salt. It's not written in stone. Right. Thanks everyone for joining in. Have a great day. Good night. catch you on Discord. Click follow if you haven't clicked follow. All those wonderful things. All right. Bye, everyone. Here comes outro time.